Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The clock ticked steadily, each minute a small nail driven into my nerves. I tapped at my keyboard, forcing myself to concentrate, but the uneasy whispers in the office seemed to grow louder. Kevin and Rebecca, two younger managers who had risen quickly through the ranks, were talking by the copier. Their voices were low, but I caught fragments, my name mixed with words like retire and slipping. My heart sank. This wasn't the first time I'd overheard them, and I doubted it would be the last. Moments later, Rebecca sauntered over, her heels clicking on the floor, stopping just behind my chair. "Antonia," she said, her voice honeyed but with a sharp edge, "could you double-check those reports from last month?" Kevin noticed a few inconsistencies. I turned, caught off guard. Inconsistencies? I went over them twice. They should be accurate. Rebecca gave a tight smile, her eyes narrowing. "Maybe so, but a fresh look wouldn't hurt, don't you think? Kevin just wants to make sure we're up to date." Before I could respond, she walked off, throwing a quick glance at Kevin, who smirked as if they shared some private joke. I clenched my teeth. The reports were flawless. I had seen to that. But now doubt had been planted, and they knew it. As the day dragged on, the tasks they assigned piled up like a barricade meant to slow me down. Every email from them seemed designed to trip me up, loaded with requests that would consume my time. Yet I noticed that both Kevin and Rebecca hardly seemed buried under similar workloads. They strolled between desks, laughing, whispering to others, stirring up subtle comments I caught as I walked by. Remarks about keeping up with change and knowing when it's time. At lunchtime, I sat alone, pushing food around my plate. That's when Claire, a colleague from the accounting department, joined me. She looked concerned, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what's going on, Antonia, but Kevin and Rebecca. They've been meeting with the new president, saying there are issues in your department." I felt a tightening in my chest. What issues? "They keep mentioning fresh perspectives, saying there's a need for, well, someone with newer ideas," Claire murmured, her face clouded with guilt as if she hated to be the bearer of bad news. I swallowed, forcing myself to stay calm. "Thanks for letting me know, Claire." Back at my desk, the whispers continued, and I felt Kevin's eyes on me from across the room. He strolled over, casually leaning against my cubicle wall, arms folded. "Hey, Antonia. Look, I don't want you to feel pressured, but have you ever thought about, taking it easy? After all these years, maybe it's time for a well-deserved break." I met his gaze, forcing a steady smile. "I'm exactly where I want to be, Kevin. I'm not going anywhere." For a second, surprise flickered in his eyes, but he quickly recovered, flashing a dismissive grin. "If you say so. Just don't wear yourself out." He sauntered away, leaving me fuming at his subtle threats. That evening, as I gathered my things, I caught a final glimpse of them together, heads close, sharing a conspiratorial laugh. Something had shifted in the office. The quiet respect I'd once enjoyed was dissolving, replaced by suspicion, doubt, and Kevin and Rebecca's cold, calculating smiles. A cold silence filled the office as I walked in. My desk felt like an exposed island amid a sea of whispers and sidelong glances. Just as I sat down, the president's assistant, Leela, appeared at my desk, her expression unreadable. "Antonia," she said quietly, "the president would like to see you. Now." My pulse quickened. I knew this was coming, had sensed it in every suspicious look and whispered conversation. But I held my head high as I followed her to the president's office. Kevin and Rebecca stood outside, looking far too comfortable. Kevin gave me a slight nod, his smirk barely concealed. Inside, the president sat behind his imposing desk, looking at me with a carefully crafted neutrality. "Antonia, thank you for coming," he began, gesturing for me to sit. "We need to have a serious discussion about your position here." He hesitated, as if searching for the right words, but I could already see where this was going. We've been reevaluating roles in the company, he continued, glancing briefly at his stack of papers. And we believe it's time to make room for some new perspectives. His voice was gentle, but the meaning was as clear as a slap to the face. My voice stayed steady. New perspectives? I've been here for 32 years. I've built relationships with clients, trained half the team. The president raised his hand, cutting me off. We appreciate your dedication, Antonia, truly. But with the company's recent direction, well, we just feel this would be a good moment for you to consider early retirement. Retirement? I echoed, barely able to hide the incredulity in my voice. I'm nowhere near ready to retire. The president cleared his throat, his gaze sliding away from mine. I'm afraid this is not optional, Antonia. We're offering a severance package. It's generous, more than fair. Outside, I could see Kevin and Rebecca hovering, pretending to be busy but watching every moment. They didn't even have the decency to hide their satisfaction. Taking a deep breath, I met the president's gaze. So this is what it comes to. A lifetime of loyalty dismissed like an afterthought? He sighed. Antonia, please. Let's make this easy. I stared at him for a long moment, letting the weight of the betrayal sink in. Then I stood, each movement slow and deliberate. Very well. But I hope you're ready for the fallout. As I left his office, Rebecca's face brightened with thinly veiled triumph. We'll miss you, Antonia, she said with mock sympathy, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. I turned to face her, keeping my voice steady. Be careful, Rebecca. Sometimes, things don't go as planned. Her smile faltered, just for a second, and I allowed myself that small victory as I walked away. The office was unusually quiet the following Monday. I wasn't there to witness it, but I could picture the uneasy atmosphere spreading as the news trickled in. By mid-morning, the tension burst into full-blown panic. Have you heard? One of the junior employees whispered in a hushed tone to her colleague. Rebecca, perched smugly at her desk, perked up, listening closely. Clients are leaving, the young employee continued, voice barely a whisper. One after another. 49 clients, gone, just like that. Rebecca froze, her satisfaction fading into horror. Her eyes darted across the room, as if searching for an explanation. Then she abruptly pushed back her chair and stormed over to Kevin's office, slamming the door behind her. Inside, Kevin paced, his face twisted in frustration as he glanced at his phone. They're dropping like flies, he muttered, voice thick with disbelief. I've called half a dozen clients already, but none of them will give me a reason. They just say they no longer need our services. Rebecca's voice trembled with a mix of anger and desperation. This is Antonia's doing. I know it, she hissed, clenching her fists. She must have planned this somehow. She was too calm when she left. Kevin shot her a sharp look. Calm down. We can handle this. If we can't, the president will have our heads. You know that. Just as they exchanged a glance of mutual dread, the phone on Kevin's desk rang. He picked it up, and after a few tense moments, his face turned pale. The president wanted to see them immediately. They shuffled into his office, where he sat rigid, eyes fixed on them like laser beams. Would either of you care to explain why nearly 50 of our most loyal clients have left overnight? He demanded, voice laced with cold fury. He slapped a document onto the desk. Because as of this morning, we've lost half our revenue stream. Rebecca stammered, her usual confidence crumbling. Sir, we had no idea this would happen. We thought, The president's glare silenced her. You thought forcing Antonia out was a smart move. He barked, his voice a low growl. Did it ever occur to either of you that she was the only reason many of these clients stayed with us? Kevin tried to protest, his voice barely steady. We just thought fresh blood was what the company needed. Antonia's methods were outdated. The president leaned forward, eyes blazing. Outdated? Those outdated methods were our lifeline. You may have sealed this company's fate. A suffocating silence followed. For the first time, Rebecca looked truly afraid. As they left his office, Rebecca whispered to Kevin, her voice frantic. "What are we going to do?" Kevin's jaw clenched, a flicker of dread passing over his face. He said nothing. For the first time, he had no answer. The tension in the office was thick enough to cut with a knife. The president, having heard rumors of misconduct, had ordered a thorough audit and internal review. A week later, Rebecca and Kevin were summoned to his office again. This time, the president's expression was darker, more calculating. "Sit," he commanded, motioning to the two stiff chairs before his desk. Kevin and Rebecca exchanged nervous glances as they sat, the quiet ticking of the wall clock amplifying their unease. The president dropped a stack of papers onto the desk, the echo slicing through the silence. "You thought you'd get away with it, didn't you?" His voice was low, but there was a sharp edge to it. Rebecca blinked, trying to keep her composure. "Get away with? What, sir?" He flipped open the file, exposing a series of spreadsheets and email logs. "Offloading your responsibilities onto Antonia while you took credit for her work. Inflated expense claims. And..." His gaze turned icy. A highly inappropriate love connection right in the workplace, disrupting the entire team dynamic. Kevin's face flushed as he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Sir, we..." "Save it." The president cut him off, eyes blazing. "Antonia was a model employee for over 3 decades, and you two took every chance you could to sabotage her." Rebecca's calm facade cracked. "With all due respect, we acted in the company's best interest. Antonia's ways were outdated." "Enough." His voice thundered, leaving both managers speechless. "Those outdated ways you despise so much kept this company afloat. Since her departure, we've hemorrhaged clients, and I don't need to tell you why. They left because they trusted her, because she actually did her job." The president leaned back, eyes still fixed on them with a look of disdain. "I've spoken with Antonia, and I'm offering her her job back, if she's even willing to take it." Rebecca's face paled, and her voice faltered. "But she'll never agree to return with us here. She despises us." The president's lips curved into a faint, humorless smile. "That's precisely why I'm terminating your contracts, effective immediately. Clean out your desks." Rebecca gasped, gripping the arms of her chair. You can't do this." "We..." "Oh, but I can." He rose, signaling their dismissal. "If you two had focused on working with her instead of against her, perhaps we wouldn't be in this mess." The two managers rose in stunned silence, realization dawning heavily on them. Their plans had crumbled, and they were left with nothing but the consequences. Antonia's heels clicked on the polished floors as she made her way back to her old office, head held high. The company president had called her back with an apology and a generous offer. She had hesitated, but something about this return felt right. She wanted to see the company, her clients, and herself thrive again. As she walked down the familiar corridor, whispers and astonished glances followed her. Some of her old colleagues gave subtle nods of respect. Just as she reached her desk, she saw Kevin and Rebecca hurrying out of the building, faces ashen. Rebecca caught her eye for a brief moment, an expression of shock and indignation twisting her face. But Antonia felt nothing for them anymore, only a deep sense of closure. The president greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome back, Antonia. It's good to have you here again. We're already seeing positive feedback from clients who heard the news." Antonia nodded, scanning her desk. Everything had been restored as if she'd never left. "Thank you, sir. I only wish it hadn't come to this." He leaned closer, his tone sincere. "You deserved far better than what happened, and I assure you, those responsible have paid the price." Just then, a message notification lit up her computer screen. It was from the CEO of one of their biggest clients, one of the 49 who had left. She clicked it open, reading the brief but impactful message. Our contract renews next month. We're in if you're in charge, Antonia. Her heart surged. She had never imagined such a swift, clear gesture of trust from a client. The president glanced over her shoulder, reading the message with a small smile. You're a vital asset, Antonia. The clients see it. I see it. Let's work together to make this company what it should be. She nodded, feeling an overwhelming sense of pride and resolve. Just as she was about to respond, her phone vibrated. It was an unknown number, but something compelled her to answer. Antonia. A familiar voice murmured. It was Rebecca. She hesitated, then answered calmly, Yes, Rebecca. There was a brief pause before Rebecca's defeated voice spoke. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. Antonia paused, allowing the words to sink in. It's too late for that, Rebecca. Actions have consequences. Rebecca exhaled, and the line went dead. As Antonia ended the call, she took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She had risen above it all. This was her victory, not out of revenge, but because she'd stayed true to herself. With new determination, she turned back to her computer, ready to lead the company into a brighter, stronger future.